Saxon Director of the Fred Jones Jr. Museum of Art. It is my pleasure tonight to welcome you to the opening of Visual Voices, Contemporary Chickasaw Art. This exhibition is made possible by grants provided by the Chickasaw Nation, the National Endowment for the Arts, and by assistance from the American Indian Cultural Center and Museum. This exhibition features 15 contemporary artists from the Chickasaw Nation and is the first survey of its kind. Before I proceed with my comments, I should say a couple of words about, first of all, the catalog. Pre-orders for the catalog are available tonight. We have a booth set out in the Sandy Bell Gallery where we're having the reception after this program. If you order tonight, you do get a discount. After tonight, the price will be the regular price, so it will sort of go up. So if you're interested in that catalog, please get it tonight. Please pre-order. I also want to mention that there are several of the artists that are included in the exhibition that have work in our museum store Muse, which is upstairs. So please check that out as well. Now, this exhibition came into being in part through the organizational efforts of many of the artists, but it was also the product of two curators in particular, Dr. Manuel Othman, Chief Curator at the Institute of American Indian Art Museum of Contemporary Native Art, and Karen Whitecotton, owner of Heritage Museum Services, LLC, and Museum Registrar for the Sam Noble Museum, just a little further to the south. A logistical undertaking such as this would not have been possible without the dedication of Laura Marshall Clark, Exhibition Program Manager for Visual Voices, owner and management consultant of Wild Horse Consulting, LLC. So I would like you to thank them by a brief round of applause. They put a lot of hard work into the show, and I think as many of you have seen, it really did pay off. The Chickasaw Nation has played a significant role in supporting this exhibition, and we are joined tonight by several dignitaries. First and foremost, Governor Bill Anatubby is here tonight and will make several remarks in this program. We are also joined by Secretary of Commerce Bill Lance. Visual Voices also enjoyed advisory support from the staff at the American Indian Cultural Center and Museum, and we have several staff members tonight. Instead of naming you all, would you please stand and receive your proper acknowledgement? We thank you for your help in putting this exhibit together. It is now my pleasure to introduce Governor Bill Anatubby. Bill Anatubby began his career with the Chickasaw Nation in 1975 as its Health Services Director. In 1979, he was elected as the tribe's first lieutenant governor and elected to his first term as governor in 1987, when the tribe had about 250 employees. In his first term, Governor Anatubby established goals of economic development and self-sufficiency for the Chickasaw Nation and its people. And today, the Chickasaw Nation manages more than 13,500 employees, more than 200 government programs, and numerous tribal businesses. Along with his diligent work on behalf of the Chickasaw Nation, he serves on numerous boards and councils, receiving recognition and awards for his leadership in Indian country. Among those, he has been a member of the Intertribal Council of the Five Civilized Tribes since 1978 and served as both its vice president and president. He has also served as chairman for the United Indian Nations in Oklahoma. Please join me in welcoming the 30th governor of the Chickasaw Nation, Bill Anatubby.
Hi. Thank you. Well, what a nice evening. Chukma. There you go. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. This is really a dream come true, right? Absolutely. It's one of those things that you really have to work to put into words. Think about it, you know, art is something that completes your life, right? In the Chickasaw Nation, art, the Chickasaw Nation itself is complete. We have our artists, see their work. So, say hear, hear to the artists. We appreciate you. Thank you for your work. Wonderful. Appreciate, we technically call this group the Chickasaw Artists Board. They worked more than half a decade to make this remarkable art exhibit a reality. I appreciate your vision, and I appreciate your dedication. This exhibit took the collaboration of expert curators, featured artists, and the American Indian Cultural Center Museum. Appreciate all of you. Thank you all for your role in this unique, world-class art exhibit. Visual Voices is special for a number of reasons. Showcases Southeastern Native American art, and more specifically, Chickasaw art in ways that have never been seen before. Southeastern tribal art has been underrepresented in the Native American art world for far too long. It's time to change that, right, artists? By combining more than 65 diverse works of art and from 15, is that right, 15? Different Chickasaw artists, this exhibit stands to change this trend. We're moving in the right direction. To launch Southeastern and Chickasaw art into a place of prominence in both the Native art world as well as the contemporary art world. This exhibit is also special because it blends traditional with the contemporary in unique and novel ways. Although traditional and contemporary might seem like contradictory ideas, they were actually complementary in Chickasaw art. Because the foundation of Chickasaw art and creative expression is built on tradition, the collective art, ideas, and knowledge of those who came before us. This exhibit is special because it shares Chickasaw culture with the world. Our artists have done an amazing job. And those of you who have been in the exhibit, wouldn't you agree? They did a wonderful job in taking the traditional Chickasaw culture and making it modern. They've contextualized what it means to be Chickasaw in the here and the now, showing how Chickasaw culture continues to evolve, adapt, and thrive today. By taking this exhibit on the road, our artists are sharing both their unique worldviews and traditional Chickasaw culture with the public at large. A mission that harkens back to some of the great artists and storytellers of Chickasaw history, such as Tayada Thompson Fisher. Like Tayada, all of the contemporary artists and visual voices have a story to tell. It's amazing when you're actually viewing this art, it really helps to have someone, or have the artist next to you, telling you what is coming from their heart. I know you can learn that, but it helps to have them right there. It's wonderful. And, you know, by taking this exhibit on the road, our artists are sharing both their worldviews and Chickasaw culture, a mission that harkens back to some of the great artists and storytellers like Tayada, like I mentioned. Story of belonging to a people. It's a balanced story, tradition and innovation. About culture while adapting to the modern age. Story of how to connect with our past as we forge ahead into the future. Look forward to seeing what a tremendous impact this story will have on audiences all across the United States, internationally. Congratulations. You've done a fine job. Thank you, and best wishes.
Well, thank you, Governor Anatubby, for your support and for your remarks tonight. Before I introduce Dr. Manuel Othman, I want to also take the opportunity to acknowledge the artists that are here in attendance. If you would, please stand so we can give you a round of applause. Okay, it is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Manuel Othman. She is the Chief Curator at the IAIA Museum of Contemporary Native Arts. She earned her PhD in art history from Ruhr University in Bochum, Germany. Prior to her appointment at IAIA, she served as Associate Curator at Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, and previously the Curator of Art at the Montana Museum of Art and Culture at the University of Montana in Missoula. She will introduce tonight's panelists for the discussion and serve as the moderator. Please welcome Dr. Manuel Othman.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to welcome you all to the opening of Visual Voices, Contemporary Chickasaw Art, and tonight's panel discussion. Visual Voices presents thought-provoking, experimental, and critical works by 15 established and emerging Chickasaw artists. While curating this show and reviewing the selected artworks, it became clear these artists shared an interest in a variety of themes, including of women in Chickasaw culture and history, humans' relationship to nature and the land, environmental concerns, artists' connections to their current and historic homelands, tribal and personal histories, community life, cross-cultural relationships, and personal and collective identities. What stood out was that all of the artworks demonstrated a strong interest in the preservation, continuation, and further development of Chickasaw and historic Southeastern Native art traditions. One of the main characteristics of Visual Voices is the individuality and diversity of the artist's chosen media, style, and processes. Artists blend contemporary art influences with elements of Chickasaw art and culture. I was delighted to see that several artists in this exhibition pushed the boundaries of their chosen media and art forms. They experimented with materials, contemporary art practices, and aesthetics. They combined molded plastic with deer antlers and rabbit fur, solar panels and LED lights with silver and copper, or the great courage of a 16th century female tribal leader with the timeless elegance of Chickasaw finger weaving. These are just a few examples of a large number of innovative artworks in Visual Voices. What connects all of these works is the artist's strong sense of Chickasaw identity and their lively interest in art influences of the past while looking forward to the future. To quote some of our exhibition artists, "Our stories are fluid, experimental creations of curiosity." I would like to thank Dr. Mark White and the Fred Jones Jr. Museum of Art for inviting me to be part of this program tonight, and the Chickasaw Artists Board for their guidance and leadership. It has been a great honor to serve as curator for visual art, for Visual Voices, and a rich learning experience and great pleasure working with our 15 talented artists. Thank you also to our project manager, Laura Clark. This exhibition wouldn't have been possible without Laura's hard work, dedication, and organizational and communication skills. Round of applause. A special thank you to the Chickasaw Nation for their generous support for this exhibition. I would like to invite everyone to join our artist panel discussion. But before we start, I want to introduce our panel members. So if all panel members would come. To my left is Margaret Wheeler. Margaret Wheeler is a contemporary fiber artist, originally trained as a sculptor. Margaret is known for her sculptural or 3D weavings. Her training, cultural heritage, and artistic talent have found completion in her innovative weavings. Margaret received her MA degree from Pittsburgh State University, and she participated in the national traveling exhibition Changing Hands, Art Without Reservation, organized by the Museum of Art and Design in New York City. Her works are in the permanent collection of the Idle York Museum in Indianapolis, the Hurt Museum in Phoenix, Arizona, the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the Portland Art Museum. Please welcome Margaret. Next to Margaret, we have Joanna Underwood Blackburn. In her sculptures and ceramic art is inspired by Chickasaw live vase and ancient designs of the Southeast. Her artwork also incorporates themes from nature. Joanna researched her tribe's pottery traditions with the guidance and encouragement from tribal members. She was able to create and help revitalize Chickasaw ceramic art. Several of her works are also cast in bronze. Her works are in the permanent collections of the Mississippi Museum of Art in Jackson, Mississippi, Crocker Art Museum in Sacramento, California, and the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. Please welcome Joanna. And then we have Brent Greenwood. Brent studied 2D art at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he received his BFA from the Oklahoma City University. Brent works primarily in acrylics and mixed media and is inspired by the numerous art forms and narratives that are part of his Chickasaw and Ponca heritage. His work has been represented by Kiva Fine Art Gallery in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He's also a member of the Urban Indian Five, a collaboration of 5 contemporary Native artists from Oklahoma, and he served on the board of the Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition and on Arts Place Advisory Board. Welcome, Brent. All 3 artists are also members of our Visual Voices Artist Board who oversaw this exhibition. Thank you for your guidance. So my first questions are for the group. And to begin our conversations, could you please share how our Visual Voices project began? What really motivated you to plan this exhibition?
I think the exhibition started close to 6 years ago at one of our CSAM shows, Southeastern Indian Arts Show and Sale, when Governor Anatubby came around and spoke to the artist and said, let's do something. So we give him all the credit for coming up with the original idea. And Joanna and Brent and Kristen Dorsey and Daniel Worcester, we started meeting not long after that October show, and we decided we'd meet once a month, and that's what we did, not knowing what we were going to do, but we started having people come in to speak to us, to give us ideas, and think of a way that we could get Chickasaw art out to the public. And one of them was Heather Atone, who came one night. And she said, how about a traveling exhibit? And all of us went, voila, that was it. And that's when we really got serious about planning. And that was probably how long into the discussions? I mean, we'd been going for a while before we settled on a traveling exhibit.
Wanted to have an arts festival, and not just fine arts, but we also wanted to have fashion show, and we wanted to have, Governor told us to dream, and so we started dreaming of a million things that we wanted to do and what we could do. And we did decide that, we brainstormed and came up with a lot of ideas, and we probably met several times trying to figure out, Governor told us to gather together, make a list of some things that we would like to see, help promote the arts and help to get Chickasaw art out in the world, because sometimes feel like we locally, we enter shows and people know about Chickasaws locally, but you get out of Oklahoma and people have no idea sometimes even what Native American art is. And so we wanted to kind of break out of our bubble and present our art to the world. It's hard to find your place as a Native American artist in the fine art world, because sometimes I think that especially contemporary art museums, when they see that you're Native American, they think, oh, it's going to be artifacts and it's going to be more craft things, and they don't realize that the pieces that we call contemporary are sometimes different than what they see as contemporary, and so that was kind of a hurdle too at the beginning. So we always kind of knew that issue was happening, and that a lot of people knew about the Southwest art, but they didn't know about the Southeast. And so a lot of people think that that Native American art is all the same. They think they're more familiar with the Southwest, and a lot of people know what that is, but they have no clue what the Southeast art is. And that there's a lot of great Southeastern artists out there, and we wanted to find a way to promote that art and promote the Chickasaw art. So it was a few meetings to decide, well, what is the best way to promote art out there and be recognized as a serious artist in a fine art world. It's really difficult. So, finally we did come up with, let's present something in Santa Fe and have a show. We just wanted to do like a one exhibition there. But when Heather Atone came, she said, that's just one show though, let's expand that and have it travel. So then we started thinking, well, we're just gonna travel, and we wanted to go from coast to coast and international, and, and so then we started dreaming really big, but
That might come, who knows?
it might happen,
Yes, I agree. Just to comment to the very beginnings, if you will. It was at that CSAM 6 years ago. The governor came around and talked to us, and it was kind of the buzz after the market. Governor, he was like, "Hey, did the governor come talk to you?" "Yeah, he did. He talked to you." "Yeah, what did he say?" He told me the same thing. And so out of that, and I was just talking to talking about this with some of our people at the division, and from that, Artesian Arts Festival was kind of born, and that was like in January, and then I heard in February we're having an art market. I'm like, in May. I'm like, well, if anyone could pull it off, it's the Chickasaw Nation. So we're like, well, hey, this is awesome. So we were kind of part of those initial beginnings of that, but then also we got back to the idea of Southeastern art and just highlighting our Chickasaw artists. And so that being said, I've been painting for over 20 years. When I was in Santa Fe in the late 90s, many times in the gallery, people would come up to my work when I was there talking during Indian market or whatever, and like, oh, great, this is great Mexican art. Where's this from again? What part of Mexico? I'm like, this is actually Southeastern, and there are some similarities there. And it's only, I think it would just be obvious back then, through our trading and the waterways and trade routes. in the Gulf of Mexico, you're going to have all those similarities, just like we share. It's a sharing of cultures. And so you do see those similarities, but because there wasn't a vast knowing or knowledge of Southeastern art, that's why my work was mistaken in the early years as a Mayan or Mexican, Mesoamerican art. So from that, I felt, well, this would be exactly what we need to help establish that identity as Southeastern Chickasaw artists. We have a lot of great arts organizations out there, but to have one of this just specifically for our nation, our people, to comment to that narrative, what is Chickasaw art, I thought it was going to be a special exhibit. And so from that, like I said, it brought us to where we're at today, a short 4.5, 5 years. So we're already here. And my paintings were done on time, too. So I'm glad it was 4 years. So if it was any sooner than that, I might not be in the show.
The process of organizing this exhibition was also very unique. Usually you have an institution like a museum organizing shows like this, but here we have a group of people with the support of the Chickasaw Nation, and you all are members of the artist board, so your role was somewhat similar to the role of a museum director. So you guided and gave directions, you oversaw budgets, and you also served as Chickasaw cultural specialist, and you made sure this entire project is in line with the Chickasaw Nation's mission statement. So what you didn't have is museum staff, so you had to go and contract with expert specialists, and maybe you can share how that entire process was like, and what were some of the surprises, and looking back, is there anything you would have done differently?
Yes, there were a lot of surprises. And we knew immediately that we wanted outside curation. It was not good for us to do an internal curation. We wanted an outside voice looking at the work and choosing it. And we started gathering names of Native American curators, and there were very few out there. And we found one Chickasaw. We were so excited, and she was excited about the project but did not have the time to work with us. And Manuela is an expert on Native art but not Southeastern art. But when we met her, we realized her heart was in the right place, and she would have a critical eye and a voice for us. And so she was one that we talked to. And who else? I'm trying to think of other curators that we talked to the Smithsonian, other places getting curators' names, because that was one of our first choices. Well, really, I guess the first was Laura Stewart, coming up with Laura Stewart as our manager, and then started working on the curators. Laura Clark, what'd I say? Laura, I'm sorry, there's a lot of Lauras in my life, it seems like. But Laura Clark has just been phenomenal to work with. And so that, Joanna, and I let Joanna speak to that, because Joanna's the one that really was insisting that Laura come in with us. And
Thank you, Joanna.
Yeah.
For us, I don't know, it depends on how you want to look at it in a way. Like she said, normally a museum would put together an exhibition, and I guess being naive about it, thought, well, let's just put one together and have it, and we didn't think of everything that went into it. And in a way that was sort of good because we didn't know the normal process, we did it the Chickasaw way. But we did it how we thought made sense, and being an employee at the Chickasaw Nation, we help put events together, and so we kind of knew that structure already. And so working with Laura Clark at Arts and Humanities, I was a graphic designer, and she's a writer, and we'd work together on other projects. And so our sense of organizing was, well, we need a project manager. This is a project, we need a project manager. We need somebody to come on board and organize us, and we would need writing, we would need graphic designers, we would need photographers, and we knew all these things, and she knew all the artists as well. And that was kind of our thought process was, this is how it should work, this is how we envisioned it to work. But, once we got started, we realized, oh, you're supposed to have a registrar, and we're supposed to have curators, and you're supposed to have...
Normally you have, depending on the museum, maybe 10, 15 people, and look at us, we did it with a handful.
But so, looking back, I guess what we would have done differently, for the most part, is just to have more, more. So, Laura Clark did a great job, but I know she wore many hats, and so at the beginning, it wasn't too bad. But then, like in the middle of it, I think I'm happy she survived this, but she did a great job, and so we learned along the way what to do differently. Overall, we're real.
Yeah, you addressed, both of you addressed important points. You mentioned Native American curators, and now I know that is a huge issue. Wherever you go to every conference, that subject comes up, and I know in a few years it will change. There are more and more Native American museum study students, Native American art historians. It will come, and it should come, I agree.
And we did talk, we had Heather there to ask her if she would, being Chickasaw and she could not do it either. So there were 2 Chickasaw curators that we had that were not able to help us because of other obligations.
And Joanna mentioned graphic design. So you're a ceramic artist, you're a sculptor, but you also have a background in design. You studied graphic design at the University of Oklahoma, and you did the design for the brochure, the website, and also the catalog. Can you share some of the ideas you had when you worked on those designs, and what your overall vision for the aesthetic of the show was?
Yes, and actually Governor kind of touched on some of that. So it's, we wanted to honor our ancestors and those old, the ancient designs. We wanted to somehow show that, but also we knew that this was a contemporary show. So it does sound like a contradiction. So that was how to find that balance. And also, you even told some museums, as soon as they see certain images or hear the word ancient, you're out. They don't want you to be in their contemporary fine art, because they don't see that now as it's going to be contemporary.
Ethnographic show.
Yeah. And so that was kind of something that we had a lot of discussions about too.
And I learned also a lot, and I'm thankful for your remarks, Governor Anatobi, because it is true, what some curators see as ethnographic is in fact or was a contemporary element in that culture, and every culture is developing. It's in a flux basically, and so I also had my learning moments.
Yeah, and we talked to Manuel a lot. She helped us a lot too, because we know our cultural side, that she knows the museum world and she knows the fine art world, so she was able to give us a lot of pointers, help us guide us through this exhibition process. But as far as the look, that was our goal, was to still honor our old designs, our southeastern designs, because that was kind of what we're trying to educate people about, but also stylize those designs and so that it has a contemporary. That was kind of the idea for the look of the show, was to make it so that it's contemporary, but also honoring those old designs. It was a balance in doing that for the catalog and for the overall designs we used in the show.
And you also created and designed the logo for the catalog and for the entire show. Can you talk about the symbolism in your logo?
In the logo, so actually the logo design was Margaret's idea. We came up with all of us at one of our board meetings, we all came up with different concepts, and we all looked at them and studied and talked about them, but Margaret we kept looking for that contemporary feel, and and we meet at Margaret's house, so she didn't tell you that, but, so our monthly meetings are at her home, her beautiful home in Sulphur, and so it's in the, well, I don't know if it's in the country, but it's, you can see the Chickasaw National Park, you can see that. It's really beautiful there, but and her house is decorated in all Chickasaw, Southeast art, and so it was inspiring for us during the meetings. But in her house, she also has this, it's an old deerskin map, and what it is, I don't know if everyone's familiar, but it's a picture of well, it's a map, but it's a line drawing, so there's a circle, and then there's these lines that come out, and there's other circles. And what it represents is, it was the placement of different tribes, and then it showed the placement of other tribes, and these linear lines, just kind of went to each tribe. And, but Margaret has it featured in her house, and so we see it every time we met. We looked at that picture over and over, but I guess it didn't occur to us that this was a great logo, so, but, Margaret mentioned, maybe we should do the map, and so we thought, yeah, we should do the map. So, and it looks contemporary. If you don't know what it is, already, and so that it made sense to do that. So, but in the middle of the circle, that's the Chickasaw Nation. We put the four corners design, the sacred fire design, which is a circle with the cross, and then in each quadrant we put the seasons, but southeastern stylized designs for each season. So there's a summer and a fall.
Yeah. And you mentioned the seasons, and maybe that's the answer to my next question. One of the early concepts for this show was to organize it by season, and that's still somewhat reflected in the way we organized the catalog, and it's also addressed in one of our wall texts. So was the map you have in your wonderful home, also part of that process? Was that inspiration for the seasons concept?
What I have is a glass etching of it, and I have one of the sun symbols with it that would be more of a summer, so I guess you could take it from there that could possibly be. But I had not thought about it being necessary seasoning. I just knew it was a really valuable map of our early days, and that's one reason I wanted it as a center post, and that's why it's nice to be the logo for.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to comment on the logo real quick.
Yeah.
Just because, like I said, with the exhibit itself evolving and taking these different twists and turns, and great art transcends time, and that map, like I said, just we saw it every time we met. Yeah, just the linear quality of it, just how striking it was, and to put it into a modern context, it just shows how that transcends time. And I think that's what we are doing as artists. We're taking those ancient designs, elements, and bringing them forward to today, to modern time. And so I guess that's why sometimes our original title was Our Ancestors Are Singing, so putting that word in there just automatically would turn some contemporary museums off. So we totally understood that after we thought about it and heard the discussion as to why. So anyway, so that changed, and but getting back to the great art, I'm inspired by all those designs and symbols from antiquity, and bringing those forward and creating those designs in a modern context to represent air or the flowing of clouds or water, and all those elements I bring forward today, and kind of just use that as my inspiration. So that is what happened with the logo and how it evolved. And so originally the logo was, I was kind of tasked with doing that, and so my design was basically taken off of a face gorget, and it was totally southeastern, but it looked like something from antiquity, so it was a little too ethnographic, if you will. So that's why it evolved, and so I said, well, I guess we're not going to use this logo, so I put it on a drum and I sold it. So anyway, and I think Mr. Perkins has that drum now, so and so it was meant for him. So but anyway, but Joanna, we did take elements from that too, and she incorporated, like, if you were to represent ice, how do you do that? Maybe what's one of these designs looked like it could represent ice or wind, or and so that was some of the thought that went into the kind of the redesign of the logo. So I just wanted to mention that.
And one thought comes to me is the camaraderie of our group over a 5-year span of meeting once a month. We became very close, and the brainstorming is something that you really miss. You have it when you're, at university and you're working, but when you become an artist and you're in your studio alone working, you miss that. So for me to have this group come to my house every month, and we discussed things that were pertinent to our art and to our culture, it was just really a gift. It was a gift to have this happen. So I really enjoyed everybody. And we always had Kristen on speakerphone from Los Angeles. And a couple of times we would even have FaceTime with her, but not often. And Dan would bring great pies. So it was just this camaraderie. It really was, of us all getting together. And it's sort of sad. I feel like we need to start working on something else.
Yeah, I think some of the greatest projects come out of a group effort, really, and this proves it. Joanna, you created 3 major works for these exhibitions, and one is Prayers Rising. And in order to create this work, you worked with community members from different Oklahoma tribes and invited them to provide or submit good thoughts, prayers. My question is that a process you plan to continue? I observe many contemporary Native artists working in collaboration with the community. Examples are, for example, Marie Watt, a famous Seneca artist. She creates wonderful installations using blankets. Or Canadian artist Christy Belcourt. She recently created an important work to commemorate the thousands of missing and killed Native American women. So it's it seems that more and more contemporary artists working in collaboration and using social engagement as major element. So did you find that inspiring, working with community members? Is that something you think about continuing?
That was definitely a nice surprise. I thank you for helping us to step out of the box a little bit, because normally I make pottery and art sculptures, but I've never made an installation piece. We kept thinking that through this process, and because of our logo, and we kept bringing up the sacred fire, our stop dance fire, and we kept thinking that needs to be there. That's a really big part of our culture, but how do we make it so it looks contemporary? So that was something that was always in the back of my mind, is that we need the stop dance fire, the sacred fire in the show. And because of the prayers, I wanted to hang on the spirals that represent the smoke. It was just made sense to ask people to help, because I had 113 tiles to make, and I wanted different prayers from different people, and so Dynamic Women, they had the Dynamic Women's Conference in Sulphur, and so we invited a lot of people over to come write a prayer, and that was really nice, because I didn't know so many people would be interested in the sculpture or writing a prayer for it, but all of a sudden we were swamped with everybody lined up to write a prayer. And so we do have a lot of Chickasaw prayers on the sculpture. And then after that, it was a learning experience for me too. I didn't know all the 39 tribes of Oklahoma, some I'd never heard of. And so it was nice to reach out to ask for a prayer, and people were so willing to be a part of the project and to help and submit a prayer for it. So yes, I would definitely like to do that again, but also just thanking you for helping us to do something different than we normally do. So I think that the pieces in the show, at the beginning we kept telling the artists, let's do something exciting and maybe step out beyond what we normally do and do something because of that, you know, the wild onion piece I did with prayer sculpture was something different. Really, so now it has me thinking of other ideas that I could do. It's just that, you know, they were year-long projects, and so, you know, it just takes a long time. But yes, definitely want to collaborate again with the community or with other artists.
And it's an important piece, I think, because when we started talking about this piece, you mentioned something like that you wanted to involve members of other tribal communities here, because often in daily life or when it comes to political decisions, what happens here also affects other people in the state. So it's a reminder of the importance of community involvement and working together.
Yes, and even with that, I thought it was interesting because when I called, you know, other tribes, you know, I didn't know anybody from that tribe, and so would randomly call their offices and try to explain what I'm doing and do they know somebody who would like to submit a prayer. And it was interesting because some people they got very serious about it, and you know, they wanted to, well, let me ask the committee, in our language committee, and you know, they really wanted to get their prayer right because it represented their tribe, and people would see it, you know, and it's going to travel, and people would read their. So I thought it was interesting that, you know, I didn't. So some people I would tell it doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be anything formal. It can be, you know, just you or a member of your family if someone would like to do it and contribute. But and a lot of people did it that way. But yeah, some people made it, you know, they really formal, and they wanted to be sure it was right coming from their tribe. But again, so that continued on for them, then getting their community involved in this one, where, you know, they were sending before they.
Next questions are for Margaret. Uh, so I feel you brought weaving to a totally new level with your sculptural pieces. And can you share with our audience how these works evolved? I know you're also doing fashion design. Is that something that came out of your fashion designs?
Yes, to some degree, because I never wanted my clothing or my garments hanging on a rack in a pole. And so I started always trying to show them. I first in fashion shows and all, but that was not realistic to get to the Indian markets and the majority of the people. And so I started making even mannequins at different times, and I made stands. I do a series called The Spirit Animals, and I made walnut stands for those that the headdresses would go on. So I felt like if someone bought the piece, they bought a sculpture, but then they could rob the sculpture to wear. If it was a coat, if it was a robe, you know, a headdress, and those went quite well. And so I started that probably 20 years ago, doing the stands. And then when I did Low Walk, we showed it the first time at the McSwain Theater in Ada, and I loved the costumes that had been created, but they just were not hanging correctly on what was there. So at that period of time, I started making my own mannequins, and out of clay, I formed, because I do have a sculptural background, I formed my torso and did clay faces, and then I made a cast of that, and then for those mannequins, then it was plaster. And even Joanna was helping me put tattoos on those for one of the shows we were doing at the Cultural Center. So I made my own mannequins to show those costumes, and I was very pleased with the effect, because then you have a person there. You have someone there. And I have done the hand-cast, hand-woven faces for probably 35 years, just to be framed or hung. And with this exhibit, again, thank you for pushing us out of our bounds. I, for the first time, did a hand-woven torso that is hand-molded, hand-woven torso in Lita and in The Murder of One. And and again, it was a long, long time working on these pieces. So it was good to come up with an idea and figure out how to take it to fruition. And so I knew I wanted to do a swan cape, is how the swan started with Leda. And in my research, I saw that Zeus had come down and seduced the king's wife, Leda. And I started thinking, well, a swan, and here was Michelangelo, Raphael, all these famous artists had done paintings of Leda, and I thought, I'm going to do Leda. So I did. And so the cape is very significant to the Mississippians and the tribes. The swan capes were worn by the elite, and that's why I'd always wanted to do one. And it's impossible to get swan feathers. I tried to get it for low walk and couldn't. And I used mostly goose feathers in those costumes. But with this one, I wove the cloth and made the individual feathers for it. And then the swan head comes around, who is the seducer. And it more or less stands for several things. It's a little bit of a political statement for, and I don't do political statements a lot, but it just seemed to happen. It was the seduction of Leda, or a tribe, or a colonization of taking away the lands that had happened to the Mississippians. And so that is Leda. And it was very interesting. And also when you get an idea, and it's in your head what you're going to do, but it constantly changes. It always comes to something else, and it takes a life of its own and grows, and she did that. And so I was very pleased with the final effect.
I agree. It is a very interesting
Thank
piece,
you.
and I like the symbolism you just mentioned. It also stands for colonization. So it's a really deep, multi-layered piece.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, speaking of your processes, it seems that you also like to experiment with fiber art materials. For example, in your piece ancestors.com.
Yes.
Can you talk more about the story behind that body of work?
Well, on those, it's a whole series. There was about 6, I think, originally. And I used to do some I was a high school teacher, and we did every kind, I taught fiber, and we did every kind of fiber art. So paper making was one of our fiber arts that we did. And so I loved the idea of making paper. And so I had these small pieces of paper that I had done maybe 20 years ago. And I believe I started it for a show that was coming up in Santa Fe. And I stamped on it the map. The map is very, in my life, it keeps appearing. It's very sacred to me. And so I stamped the Chickasaw map on there. And then I also went back to another ancestors in the Mississippians, and I started putting Mississippian symbols on there that I'd seen off of shell carvings and pottery and everything. And then I embroidered a Mississippian pot on it with my hair. And so it's called Ancestry.com because my hair is the DNA that takes you back through the Chickasaws to the Mississippians, and it's all of a thread of our lives. I become part of all of that.
Yeah, when I saw the piece, that's what came to my mind. The artist becomes one with this really ancient old art tradition, and I think it's a wonderful body of work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
My next questions are for Brent. One of your pieces in the show is The Awakening, and it's a wonderful painting. It has vibrant colors that seem to resonate music or song. And when I look at your new works, it seems there are several figures in your portraits that seem to sing. Are those paintings references to Chickasaw music traditions?
Yeah, absolutely. So normally, on a painting that size, it would take me a year. So I stepped outside my box and got it done in 9 months. So that was the extent of me and pushing myself, because I was really cheerleading that with all the artists I knew that got accepted or curated in today's show. I was like, yeah, this is your chance to really step outside the box, man. Do something just really just innovative and just be free to explore and experiment. And so I pull out the acrylics. And so what I did though through that process was layer and layer. There are tons of layers. I mean, if you were to cut through that painting, you would see all these different layers. And it's kind of cool as an artist sometimes, as painters, you've cut through your palettes or taken an X-Acto and cut a layer away. And it's like you see all the different layers. It's like soil layers, and it's pretty cool. And you would see that if you were to cut through my painting, because there's a story, and it evolved into another story. And so what it became was like a metamorphosis of the song, the spirit of the dance. Even the title changed. I think the original title was something like Enlightenment or something like that. But then as I worked on it, it changed into the Awakening, because it was something that just materialized through that process, and me opening up myself to the art and letting that direct me. So through that process, that's what I arrived to. So basically, you see some of those elements I'm always referring to back to, like our Mississippian people, southeastern symbolism, and so I always just see like our singers, our dancers making those calls, those songs, and those prayers, those songs going up to the Creator. And I thought of something celestial. I thought of the heavens, and so that's why in that voice you see like an outer space, basically. So I was thinking of all that, and then that to the fire, and I was trying to represent all the seasons in one painting. And somehow, I don't know if I did it, but I feel like they're there. But even the clouds, there's a flow to the clouds, and so like I said, that painting just really took on a whole new feeling and purpose through the creation of it. So I did, in a sense, I did push myself to explore and kind of just open up, and I finally, I was just talking about that painting earlier with a friend tonight. It did get to a point, because at first I had it, then I lost it, got it back, lost it again. So it was painting, repainting. Oh God, I overworked it. Got back, loosened it up, scraped it off, and so that's the process I enjoy. And through that, it built up those layers. So when I brought another paint stroke by, because of the previous scratching or layering, and like, oh wow, it's kind of cool how that happened.
It will be
So,
fascinating for painting conservatives, when they look through
exactly.
edge.
Yeah. So for posterity purposes and for provenance, it's gonna be cool to look at the back and see all those different things happening. But so, and you see the kind of the I guess my color palette, I feel like has defined me over the years, and I've had several friends tonight mention that. I have a former coworker of mine. I used to work at the U.S. Postal Service here in Norman, and I used to be a rural letter carrier for 19 years, believe it or not. So I was a mailman, and so saw one of my former coworkers here tonight. So she was talking how she saw the ad in the newspaper, and she automatically knew that was my piece. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I overheard her talking how she remembers me coming to work with paint on my hands, and kind of like I do now. I step all night. Don't pull those all-nighters like I used to, but I try to, but I can't. But anyway, so it's all part of that process, and all those experiences. That's what it gets back to, being a full-time employee with U.S. government, and now the tribal government, and all those things. Just all those stories, those experiences, and just being an active artist and being a modern-day storyteller, like my contemporaries all here. That's who we are. We're just modern-day storytellers. That's what we're doing. So.
Yeah, speaking of stories and changes, one of your pieces is titled Not a Designated Centennial Project, and it was part of a show in response of the centennial celebration here in Oklahoma, 2007. And stylistically, it looks very different. It reminded me of early pop, kind of Jasper Johns, Robert Rauschenberg with found imagery, text. And so I'm wondering, is that a unique piece in your career because it looks kind of different, or have you always been interested in both political works and works that are more culturally inspired?
It's a little bit of both, because I want to convey a message that's information, but it's not like it's going to turn people off. It's a history. You have that history, and I'm not going to shy away from that. So I'll put that, especially that piece. But I want people to understand, and I don't want them to not be just, oh my God, I can't look at that anymore. It hurts, I feel so guilty. It's not your fault, So anyway, but I want to create that understanding and get that dialogue going. So that particular piece was commenting on the land run, and that was more of a, it was more proactive. It wasn't, it's kind of reactive in a way, but I was commenting and just giving our side of the story, because at that time I don't feel like our side of the story was being discussed. It was just all about the land run, and I felt like we needed to be a part of that discussion. So that's why I created that piece. And I was definitely influenced by pop art and Robert Rauschenberg. I love his work. And so I stepped outside my box then, and I'm always doing that. I'm always experimenting, and I love that assemblages, or assemblages, the French word, assemblage, is that how you say it? But I've heard it both ways. So anyway, those just really resonate with me, because you're repurposing objects, and you're beautifying something that maybe someone has thrown away or whatever. So I just enjoy that. So that's why I experiment with that, and I want to continue to do that.
Yeah, and then one could also see that in a piece you had in Return from Exile. I see Tony Tiger here, and hello. That was an important show, and one can see that you are interested in both, really, commentary.
Yeah, exactly, because like I said, I wanted to make the information known, but doing it in a visual context. So like there's one, I did a series of paintings called There Goes the Neighborhood, but it's basically a Sooner schooner, Boomer Sooner. But I did a Sooner schooner going across the prairie, and there's two Indian guys sitting there just looking at kind of what's to be, right? And one's looking to the other going, well, there goes the neighborhood, So, but it's information, it's information, right? So people laugh at that, and at the same time they get information from it. They I never really thought about that, but yeah, huh? So anyway, so I enjoy that political commentary. And
You also have shared your artistic talents with young students at the Chickasaw Art Academy. And what advice would you give to young students, art students?
Don't be an artist. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I only say that because one of my friends, Dan Lamahaftawa, we were in a gallery, and a young IA student came in with his backpack and sketchbook, and him and I were talking about just the ups and downs of being an artist. It's feast or famine. Got to have thick skin. Not everyone can be an artist. And so this young guy comes in, and he starts talking to us, and that's what he asked. He says, okay, I'm a freshman at IA. I know you guys went there. What advice do you have for an aspiring artist? Well, he was looking at a sketchbook, and Dan just said, don't be an artist, son. He said, it got real for me when I had an eviction sign up in my yard, for sales, for rent sign in my yard. He said, I can make $25,000 on a painting, but then you got bills and all that thing, all the necessities of life that take place. So anyway, like I said, but with that, I'm joking. I want everyone to be an artist. They all need to explore that side, and it doesn't matter if you say you can't draw a stick figure. You can. You just don't give yourself a chance. So my thing is, it's just empowering our young people to help them realize and help them understand that narrative and tell their story. Because 30 years ago, I didn't know what I was wanting to say with my art. I just knew I liked to do it. So if you enjoy doing it and creating it, that's what I try to get them to understand, is that just do it, just create. And I'm still learning too. I still take the advice of my mentors and contemporaries, because I just don't want to stay in the bubble in my own little world of Brent Greenwood art. So I'm always out there going to other exhibits, and that's why I tell them, explore, take in other experiences. That's what's going to help shape your narrative. So that's what I just do, is help them to expand their horizons.
And as a curator, I must say I'm thankful for artists, because they're often the first ones who sense any changes in society and have the courage to speak up, really. So my last question is for the group. So what's next? What is your next major art project after Visual Voices?
Visual Voices 2. Coming soon.
As a group, what is our next one? Individually. Individually? Well, I'm working on my next one at the moment, is that I am creating designs that are being woven at a mill, not on my loom. And I'm working with the Chickasaws and Bill Lance and Governor Anatubby, and we will launch our new line at the annual meeting in October. So we're very excited. I sent off designs today. So.
Project is actually, I'm hoping it's going to be a collaboration with Another artist, another Chickasaw artist. I don't know how much I can speak on it, but it will be another large sculpture, so.
That will be excellent, I know.
Want to wake up in the morning. I'm tired. That's my next big project. No, it's always I definitely want to take this this notion of what contemporary Chickasaw art is, and the idea of what we have here, and be able to see the show in its entirety is just amazing. And seeing what my fellow artists have done, my friends, contemporaries, mentors, colleagues, name it. I mean, I'm just all inspired, and from that. That's what I'm talking about, taking in those experiences. So that's just going to inspire me to continue to do what I do and go this direction with assemblages or, my mixed media. And that's just where I'm at. I'm always just kind of on the grind and always evolving. So.
And may I speak for Brent?
Please do.
Brent is now working on the Chickasaw Arts Academy and as its director. And I am amazed at the people he is bringing in to work with our young people. They're even adding a culinary arts this year. And he has just done magnificent things, and I would like to see that just grow and become bigger, because he's doing a wonderful job with that.
That'd be my full-time job, Governor. Thank you for that. I really do appreciate that, and two, that's because, being out there and involved, you form relationships, and that's what this is all about, is making those connections, forming relationships, and it's pretty amazing. Like over the years, I can call on them, and I can, hey, by the way, I met him, and like I said, just not being involved in your own little bubble, but making those relationships and connecting, networking, and so I've done that over like 20 years, and now it's all like coming to fruition, and I never thought and realized in my wildest dreams that it would happen this way. So, thank you.
The Chickasaw youth are what's gaining through that too, though.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, great. I think our time is up here, and I want to thank you all for participating in our tonight's artist panel discussion. Thank you.
Well, thanks to Dr. Manuel Othman, as well as our panel for the presentation tonight. The reception will continue next door, and of course the exhibit is open, so thank you all for coming tonight.